All right, let's begin. So I want to thank Mark and Ann for inviting me out in Splunk to come and talk to you folks. Mark did say we have a hard stop at the 50-minute mark. So when I glance down at the clock, it's not because I'm tired of you. It's just I want to make sure we hit that deadline. So hey, the data age is here. Are you and your students ready? So a little bit about myself. My name is Chris. I manage a team of technical instructors, as Ann had mentioned, and I drive an electric vehicle. And when I plug in the destination on the GPS, the car gives me an estimation of what it thinks the battery is going to be when it arrives from point A to point B. Cool. Recently, there was a software update that now factors in weather, so weather conditions. And this is helpful for me because when I'm driving into the mountains to ski, the car drives, the battery is affected differently if I'm driving through snow or not. So now, with weather being part of this calculation, the car is making smarter recommendations to me, so I in turn can make smarter decisions about where I should pull over and park and maybe recharge the car. So that's cool. And now some of you might be thinking, big deal, you survived this far without that feature. You're the human, you're gonna make a decision, you can look down at the gauge and figure out when you need to recharge. And you're right, but on the other hand, I think it's pretty dang neat. And on top of that, it's helpful. So regardless of how big or small that improvement is on a person-to-person basis, it is an improvement. And this is an example of a company that used data to make a decision to help improve their product and services, which in turn benefited me, the customer. This is emblematic of the world that we live in, where we have a world full of companies making a solar system worth of decisions based off of a galaxy of data. And this is the data age. If we were to step back, though, and talk about what are things that contribute to this data. By the way, I Googled this yesterday, and how much data is output in the world in any given day, and the results were 2.5 quintillion bytes of data. So I don't know, that could be true or not, but that's a lot of data. And if we think about traditional devices that output data that we're aware of, hey folks at home, we have things like the obvious low-hanging fruit, like computers, network devices, routers, switches, your phone, your apps on your phone. Cool. A big industries with a lot of multi-billion-dollar industries, companies that have skin in the game. But there's also a new frontier of emergent technologies such as machine learning, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, that's creating a whole new landscape and a whole new frontier of data that companies are going to have to get their handle on and that consumers are going to be consuming. And if we look at some old school devices, like a refrigerator, you slap some sensors on it, call it an API, have it talk to your phone or the company to send you notifications. All of a sudden, you now have a smart refrigerator. So we have these legacy things that are now smart and are part of a family of devices called the Internet of Things, also a multi-billion-dollar industry, also contributing to that 2.5 quintillion bytes of data out there. So as you can imagine, this is the world we live in today. When your students graduate, in the coming years, that number is in all likelihood going to be bigger. One key differentiator that I want to mention here about the data age is the data age is not necessarily about these devices. Rather, it's about the data that these devices output and the power that we have and the power that can be yielded by taking action on that data. So data, as you can understand, is critical for some of the points you see here. In any given organization, it can support increased demand on digital systems. It can help drive change, whether through cloud or digital transformations, and it helps solve our health, supply chain, and education challenges along the way. Now, this statement up top is pretty dire. Organizations will make things happen with data or cease to exist. That is pretty harsh, but I mean, if we're being honest, it's quite accurate. If we take a look at a company like Amazon, which, for better or for worse, they do a tremendous job of actually understanding the data that they have, measuring it, figuring out what metrics are important, and then taking action on that. And we can distill that down to the customer experience of when I log on, it knows what products to show me. And of course, there's huge complexities behind the scenes, as you can imagine. You compare that to a startup mom and pop shop trying to sell something online, and they have a tremendous uphill battle to try and use data to try and compete with Amazon. And you can imagine if they don't use data, they're probably going to squander their competition away to Amazon. So quick shout out to all the littler shops that are still doing this, like the Best Buys and the Targets and the Walmarts, who are still surviving and possibly thriving in their niches, despite the looming shadow of Amazon. But Amazon is a great example of a company that affects how I live, work, and play. And you all here can think about different services that you use that are similar. Like Netflix, maybe some of you use that, or Hulu or Amazon, figuring out what videos or what content you want to consume. Yelp is doing the similar situation with the dining industry. Your medical provider could be doing something similar when it's offering different medical services or health plans that it wants to provide you based on metrics that it's measuring about you. Okay? But to do what Amazon, what Netflix, what your medical provider, what Yelp is doing, it's not easy. It's hard. Turning real-time data into action is hard. And we can think about it like this. Yes, we just said there's a lot of data that's output, a lot of devices out there putting a lot of data, but without a proper strategy to understand this data and make sense of it, a lot of it is noise, right? It's equivalent to you're thirsty and so you take your cup under a waterfall hoping for a nice brisk drink, right? You're going to hit this deluge of information. And so what companies have been doing who haven't properly prepped for this is they've started scrambling. You have engineers across different teams trying to pull information from different data silos and disparate data sources, trying to build integrations across legacy systems or fragmented cloud services, all trying to solve specific business cases and use cases across the sub-organization. And as you can imagine, that's going to be really complex, maybe impossible for one person to do, depending on the size of the team and the size of the organization, but it's hard. And this is where a company like Splunk comes in. So Splunk, for those of you who may not have heard, is a universal machine data platform whose goal is to help bring value to anyone the data that they have access to. So it could be considered a one-stop shop where someone can, or a team of someone's, can investigate, monitor, and analyze, and act on their data. So an example of this, of an investigation, is maybe you're familiar with log files that a computer puts out. So we're all familiar with metrics like CPU usage. If the CPU usage goes high, sure, maybe we can run some searches inside of Splunk to show us information around what it looks like when CPU usage goes high. But I, the human being, don't want to sit there and hit refresh all the time to see that information. So what I can do in Splunk is I can set up proactive reports and alerts that can monitor this data for me. And so if we cross certain thresholds, maybe I'm alerted if that 95% CPU usage hits. On top of that, and after that, I can analyze the data. And so a quick example of a correlation here could be if I see that CPU usage goes up, I know from this other data set that I've ingested into Splunk that customer satisfaction goes down. Perhaps there's a correlation between the two because the customers can't hit the site or fetch the information fast enough because the CPUs, our hardware isn't serving it quick enough. And then, of course, we can act on it. We can determine how to fix, exactly how much resources to apply to that. So that was a basic example. And as you can see up on the screen, we have some other examples in the IT, security, DevOps, and business operations domain. You don't have to take my word for it. Splunk has customers. I think we're over 20,000 customers, most of the Fortune 100. There's a good chance when your students graduate, if they're applying for work in the field of data science, security, artificial intelligence, et cetera, they might end up working at one of these companies where there is already Splunk installed and in use, which would benefit them if they had the Splunk training and certification. This is another slide that talks about how we're doing. So yes, we do well with Gartner in the SIM Magic Quadrant, a market share leader with Gartner in 2021, and an outperformer as well. Before I talk about what the meat of really why I'm here, I do want to say one more point, is that who uses Splunk? Pretty much anyone that has access to or needs the data. Okay, so there could be the techie people, your developers or your data scientists, your architects and your administrators. It could be more of the business case users or the business users. In fact, some of you here are taking a Splunk training this week with Haya Hussein. And for those of you who are taking that class, you will get enough information, knowledge, and practical experience to take the power user certification, where you will essentially have the capabilities of a business user. And then it grows from there. Which brings us to why I'm even here to begin with. And I realize that Zoom stuff up at the top, so let's pretend it's not there. The Splunk Academic Alliances. What Splunk is doing, and I admit that we're probably a little late to the game here, is we want to provide our training and certifications to you and your students at no cost as part of this Academic Alliance program. So we've talked about what data is, we talked about challenges that companies might face, and so here we're going to talk about how we could perhaps bridge that skill gap between when students graduate and what kind of skills they should have or could have when they go to these companies that could potentially be using Splunk. A brief history lesson. The Splunk Pledge was announced a few years ago, where we pledged to donate a lot of licensing, training, and services to nonprofit, workforce, education, and research facilities. But I'm here to double click on just the education portion. The Academic Alliance is aimed for educators, that's you folks, and your students, so that you can learn and perhaps integrate Splunk into your curriculum in a couple of different ways that we'll see. Is there a need? Yes, we'd said that there's a need from a data standpoint. Here are some numbers from a career standpoint. You can see 2.7 million jobs in data analytics, data science, and data engineering. Over 11 million jobs projected to be needed in those categories by 2026. 3 million jobs in cybersecurity, and big data being the most, among the most in-demand roles in 2022. So there is a market demand out there for these kinds of jobs. That it would behoove us all to skill up the students of today so they can address the problems of tomorrow. We also did a study on Splunk Knowledge and Splunk certification. And the basic gist of it is the more Splunk a person knows in their careers, or the higher certifications they've acquired for Splunk in their careers, the higher their earning potential and promotion potential is as well. So yes, from a data side, being able to understand and use platforms and tools like Splunk to understand and take action on that data is important. From a career side, yes, knowing Splunk specifically does benefit those students or those career workers. Here's a couple quotes that I'm not going to read that we've pulled from some of our folks who are learning to use Splunk. I wasn't here for these quotes exactly, but I did participate in a training, I want to say about 9 months ago, with a different university in Illinois. And the students and the point of contact there did reach out and say that this was tremendously beneficial for them and they're glad they took it. So cool. People say they like the training. So what is this Academic Alliance program, or what are the benefits? And they're here on screen. Engagement with a strategic partner. When you partner with us, what we will do is we will work with you to help figure out what's the best course of action to get Splunk into your classrooms. So even in class today that Haya was in, that I was observing, there were people there that were in completely different domains, such as cybersecurity versus data analytics versus IT ops. And so there's no one size fits all. And so as we're building this program, we would love to partner with you and figure out what your needs are so we can help build the program around what your needs could be. And then hopefully redeploy this so that other people, other colleagues can take advantage of that. You'll have access to our comprehensive library of all of our training. That includes slides, that includes lab documentation, that also includes the lab servers themselves. So you don't have to actually architect and host your own Splunk servers. We spin those up virtually using AWS, and we provide that service here for you at no cost as well. Access to Splunk instructors and curriculum developers. In other words, you get to work with our education team to help develop the program, depending on what it is that you're trying to accomplish again. And the end of it is you'll learn in-demand skills, which we saw were useful in the marketplace, using our real-world hands-on lab environment, and yield potential great career benefits for your students. And so here is the thing. Here is what it is that you get, your choices off the bat. On-demand, basic, and advanced. I'm going to go right to left here. On-demand is our easiest offering right now. You just sign up for the pledge, you have access to a library of all of our e-learning for free. And your students can now take those courses. You don't have to teach them. It probably should help that you at least understand what's going on. But that's our easiest, low-touch, ready to deploy. If you say, hey, Chris, let's get Splunk in my classroom right now, I can hook you up with on-demand and you can get going tomorrow, or however fast our servers sync. The next option is the basic option, where we have a live instructor actually teach workshops that you or your students can attend. This is very similar to the class that we're running this week with Haya. It doesn't have to be the content that we're running this week, which is the power user content. If your students are ready for more advanced curriculum, such as data science, machine learning, or security, we can run those kinds of classes for your students as well. And then last but not least is the advanced option. The advanced option is you want to have custom tailor-made Splunk curriculum or Splunk content integrated into your curriculum. This is a high-lift project. It's still going to come at no cost. We're still trying to figure this out, and we want to work with you folks here to help figure out what you guys need or what you guys and gals need in your classroom. The slide deck will be available later. I saw some people taking a screenshot of this, and I will have my contact information up there as well. But this is basically what we have ready to go. Cool. And I have 5 minutes left. So are other people participating in the academic partnership right now? Absolutely. Everyone here is at a different point. Almost everyone here is doing at least the on-demand option. A bunch of them have expressed interest in doing the basic offering as well. And a lot of them do want advanced yet, but we're all working for that. And as you can see, we've got more in development. All right, so as far as action items for you, and I'm so proud of myself for finishing on time, is if you have any questions about this, I mean, I'm not trying to push this on you. You can reach out to me. My email's at the bottom there. On the other hand, our general email queue for academic partnerships is academicalliance@splunk.com. You reach out to that email address, somebody, maybe even me, I'll reply, and then we can get started. Otherwise, you can email me directly, and I'm the only person managing that email queue, so I may be a little bit slower down. All right? And we have 3.5 minutes left for questions. Are there any questions?